team.
Hey there guys, this is Malorian, and this is finally going to be the review of the Nagash End of Times book. And it's been a long time coming. For those who haven't seen my other videos, my computer had big issues where it crashed and it died, and it got fixed and it died, and now I'm finally able to come back to this. But, and as well too, this is my first time using my new mic, so let me know if you enjoy the improved sounds. But anyway, I think in the end, I was happy actually that I didn't get to do this right away. And the reason is because when I first got this information in, I really didn't like it. I was the grumpy old man saying, no, this is horrible, and this is going to be wrecked, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying that's all gone. There's still some things I don't like. But now that I've had pretty much a week now to really digest this, now there's parts that I'm starting to really see the other side of the coin. So I always like going out and getting these book reviews out there right away, but I think I have a better understanding of the book now that I've had time to talk to tournament organizers, talk to other players, really get the, the opposing views, and hopefully I can share those all today. So we're going to really kind of cover the book. I'm not going to get too deep into the special characters because, like I always do, I normally attack the book first and then special characters second. Now, unfortunately in this one, the special characters are really, really core to it, but then again, I think really the basis of this book is the main thing that we need to talk about, and I'm going to not just ignore the special characters, because again, that's really what it's all about, but I'm going to go into more detail later as how you can actually get the most from them. Now, let's start from the first part, which is really the fluff. You guys should know by now that there's two books that you get, and you get one that's tons of fluff and story, and the second one is all the rules. And for a long time, GW has not been advancing the fluff. And I've been a person who's been really against that, because I'm like, man, this is so boring. Before, at least they were moving it a little bit all the time, and then it just died. It just died and stopped, and it was ridiculous, because why read the fluff? Maybe if there's a new unit, they'll add in a little blurb somewhere to kind of justify it and kind of, force into the fluff, but otherwise, nothing ever changes. Well, that is not the case of this book at all. This book here is GW hearing that and saying, oh, you want the story to move? All right, bam, it is moved over, and look out. Really, I mean, again, this is not a fluff channel, so I don't want to get too deep into it, but it's things like Keslev is destroyed, and, all these, of course, Nagash is back, and all the rest of it, and I gotta say, for my little part here that I want to say, whereas before, I was like, come on, GW, let's move this forward, let's go. Now it's kind of more like, ugh, I think you almost went too far. And what that really is all about is, I think if I would have got these in pieces, right, that, oh, okay, this character, this happened to, okay, this character, this happened to, put it all together, and this is like a Games of Thrones Red Wedding type thing. It's just, no, all this is happening? What? So, again, I want to keep this more about the tactics, but just a little thing there where the fluff is really advanced, and if you really like reading that, get in there and get that book, because it really will be like a brand new book of stories happening. But otherwise, from my view on it, for the few of you who care, it is like the Red Wedding, where it just almost seems like too much at once. And I almost feel hypocritical now, because for so long I said move it, and now I'm saying wait, stop, but there you go. So anyway, let's now move on to what the real book is. And at its core, what this is doing is just simply combining the two undead armies. So before, you had your Tomb Kings, you couldn't march, but you had all your range options, and you had your monsters, and on the other side, you had your vampires, where we can't shoot, but we got Blender Lords, and we got Terror Geists, and they all had their own little shtick. Their own weaknesses, but their own little specialties, and now they're just basically take the two and go, whoa, this is it together. And it really is pretty much like everything from both books, plus a couple new units as well, and it gives you a lot more options, obviously. I mean, if you take two books, and each one in its own right has multiple options, when you put them together, all of a sudden, yeah, there's tons of options now. You do lose some things. I mean, as before, you'd have access to your own magical items. Now you don't have that. Now you have to take them just from the book, really. But I think that's totally worth it. I don't think there's anyone that's like, wow, you know, that vampire, that Tomb King item, I really needed that for my army. It was more like Tomb King saying, man, I really wish I could march, or the vampire saying, wow, I wish I had some shooting so I could actually do something. And now you're getting all of that. So this is the really tough part, is that where normally I want to go through and I want to say, okay, the Lords you have this, and the Core you have this, and the Special you have this, and the Rare you have this, and this is the best item, and this is the worst, and all these. I've really kind of covered these before in the other videos. So it almost seems like too much to do with that now. Sorry, a little bit of cold. But the real main thing that I'm really starting to actually enjoy, because, again, when I first thought about, man, there's new special characters could do this, and there's new rules for this, that's BS, that's going to be wrecking everything. When you just look at this, where you take all these options and put them together, it's like, wow, you can make some really crazy, interesting armies now. And when I talk to the different Tomb King players, like especially the Tomb King players, they are all over this, because the whole idea before where you could not march really forced your Tomb King army to be played a certain way. If I can't get across the field, basically, I want you to come to me, and I got two ways of doing this. I could do it through shooting, and I could do it through magic, and I guess there's a third way, I could do both. So I got Archon the Black or whatever, shooting down Purple Sun at you. Meanwhile, the Skullapults are shooting, and when you get to me, hopefully you're dead enough that I can finish you off with some chariots or something like that. But for the most part, I am not going to be pushing the line of battle because I'm just too damn slow. It's not worth investing the magic to try and be the same as everybody else, so let's force you here. All of a sudden now, even if you didn't take all the other extra options, if you had no access to the vampire units, you would still have an army that is operating much differently compared to the old one, because now you have this offensive army that can actually go up there and fight. And this is huge. This allows for a more combat-based army, so you can have skeletons being led by these heroes, and you can say, all right, let's take the fight to them. Let's do this. You know, we don't need to hide anymore. We can march up our 8 inches every turn. No problem. So that's huge. When we look at the vampire side, and when I talk to vampire players, and they're like, wow, finally we got shooting, because before, it was the opposite problem. You had your vampire counts who really, you were forced to go to them. Maybe you could be defensive, do some Purple Suns, and the terror guys are going around, but for the most part, you're kind of forced to be pushing the envelope, because the opponent probably is going to be outranging you. I know whenever I faced vampire counts, I knew with my Orcs and Goblins, I'm going to castle up, because I have no reason to go to you, because my War Machines are going to do their work, and if I can go and shoot down your Terrorgeist and what have you before combat happens, well, this is just great news, and I'm just further ahead. Well, now, you can mix this up and say, oh, you want to hide back there? Oh, well, I got Skullapults. They'll be, first of all, damaging you, but then also causing panic tests, and you better watch out. And I might have archers now, right? I got my skeleton archers, and they're going to be doing damage, and they're going to be causing all this. So, that there is going to be vastly changing the army. And there's just so many different options you can go with that really then takes you to go to the theme. And the theme is the big thing that there is coming with this book, with telling all the stories and then bringing in all the characters, they really are trying to push you forward to be taking a army, a battle, something in mind, and say, okay, this army would be built like this. Well, I can now take whatever I need to build this army. And you could argue that before you could do this, like, oh, if you want to make a Manfred army, just do that. You just do that to the vampire army. Well, the problem is that, of course, now with this new fluff, everything is kind of coming together. But before the vampires and the Tomb Kings went their separate way, there was this point where they were together. And so you probably did want to mix some different elements, and now you're allowed to do that. So whether you're trying to base an army on the new Nagash's back and all this is happening, or if you're doing it kind of, from before and what's like that, you now have the options to do that, and you're not doing ally rules, you're not doing anything like this, you are just having all the options to you. So, looking at this, and I mean, again, I talked about how the Tomb King players really liked it, I talked about how the vampire players really like it. This is the reason why the fluff players really like it, because really, there is nothing stopping you or me to taking whatever army you want, mixing stuff together. I got orcs with, I got a Terrorgeist, and I got a Demon Prince, and I'll make whatever. I mean, GW is not going around trying to stop you doing this, but now you can go as a fluff player and make up this list, and no one can say no to it. Before, if I went to a tournament with my Tomb Kings and I had vampires in there, they'd say no. The TO would walk over, he'd disqualify you, or force you to change up your characters, and you go on from there. Now, it's like, well, no, this is legit. So, from the fluff side, those players are really, really happy. The next thing we could probably really talk about is the new lore. Now, this new lore of Undeath is interesting because it says here that everybody has access to it. So my orcs and goblins can now be casting this undeath stuff. And that's actually pretty cool. And we'll talk about the sneakiness of why GW would probably want to do this in kind of like a negative way after. But let's talk about the good about this first. Or more, let's first cover what it's even all about. What you really have is, in your lore attribute, is that when you cast these spells, you're going to get these little tokens. It's almost the same thing that you get with the elves, and what these tokens do is, for each one, it lets you raise up an extra 10 points if you want to use them. Now, clearly, why that's happening is because all the different spells are all about raising, and they have different levels. So if you want to cast this raise, you will get 50 points of skeletons or troops, infantry. If you go for this next one, it'll be 100, and blah 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 down the line. And at its core, that's really cool, because what that's allowing you to do is, before, you would have this option as a vampire count player. If I wanted to raise up a unit of zombies, that's no problem. And back in this last book here, they even brought back the option to be bringing up new units of skeletons. So that's cool. You can do that now. But now they took this even further, where now you can be bringing back up Graveguard. And now further spells down the line, each one, it's just like a different one. It's like, hey, you want to be bringing back your monstrous infantry? Alright, you do this spell. You want to be bringing back your chariots or monsters? Use this spell. And so it really is a whole list of just these raising spells. Now, they're not all raising, and the signature one is the one where you raise up skeletons, but there is also a combat one as well, the whole, hand of dust type thing, and they'll be for combat, and it works pretty much the way as before, except if you kill a character in combat, you get more tokens, which is good, especially if you're trying to get something like a Terrorgeist, because you only get like 200 points normally, so you can't actually get it, you have to use some tokens. But my big thing with this lore is that when you first see it, you think to yourself, oh my god, you're going to be raising up Terrorgeist, you're going to be making all these crazy things, this is going to be nuts. And then you kind of look at it again, and you get a little bit more realistic about it. And you say, what's going to be a typical magic phase? And normally for your 2d6, you're looking at, a little bit better than 7 dice because of channeling and what have you. And with those 7 dice, there's only so much you can cast, especially when you keep in mind that your opponent is going to have their own dice and their Dispel Scroll, and so really, they're going to save it for what's actually really important. I know for my Orcs and Goblins, if you're going to raise up a unit of skeletons, go ahead. I'm just going to kill those guys like nothing. Unless they're going to be in a really key spot where they're redirecting me away from a critical flank or something like that, go ahead. I just don't even care. And that's going to happen here, right? Oh, you want to raise up some skeletons? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, you're actually trying to get off a Terrorgeist? Well, first of all, do you even get a cast? Second of all, do I have the dice in hand that I can even stop it? And if not, okay, I'm just going to scroll this. I'm just going to get rid of it. Now, one of the things that it is very specific about that I'm not too happy about is the idea that these summoned up monsters don't give up victory points. And again, that was another big thing where just like the first shock response is like, oh my god, there's going to be a brand new Terrorgeist every turn and they're going to end the game with 6 more Terrorgeists. Really, that's, again, not that big of a deal because this is not anything super new. People were raising up skeletons and zombies before, and they were completely free, so not that big of a deal at this case. Don't worry, we'll be getting to Nagash soon. And so when you take that, it's like, wow, this is neat. It's an interesting lore, but at the same time, it's not super devastating. If you think about raising up a massive unit, let's say, wow, we get some good points, and let's say I have the tokens, and I actually am able to raise up a big unit of chariots. Well, first of all, it's not going to be really that big, and then on the turn that I raise it, it's not even going to do anything that turn. I mean, sure, if I was able to raise up a Terrorgeist and gotten right in the same spot, it can then scream on that turn because it's magic and then shooting. But for the most part, sorry, getting cold, the stuff you raise cannot charge that turn. So you're stuck in this spot where I want to be raising up stuff that's going to be really effective, but my opponent is going to be able to react to it first before they can even do what they need. So if I raise something up on a flank, they can turn and face it. If I put something in front, they can either charge it or something else or whatever they want. And a big thing that controls this is you can't just go and make it, wherever you want. This thing has to be within a foot of the caster. So it has to be fairly close, and if your caster wants to do this, have them in a meaningful spot. Because, if your caster's in a bunker, go ahead, raise up that stuff way back there, make all the chariots you want. It's not going to be that big of a deal. If you want to actually raise up chariots on the flank, well, your caster, your sometimes general, has to be on that flank to actually be doing these things. So this key model has to be there as well, up in the front. And that really draws that all back in, where there's this whole risk to it. Sorry. And it's not like the whole Purple Sun, where I go up there, it's like, I'm just going to send down the Purple Sun, and you lose your whole horde of trolls. It's, okay, I made this unit of chariots, and hopefully it's going to do something. And, it's just not that big of a deal. So, really, if we really take it, this right there, what I've explained, is at its core what the new book is. You have this new book that lets you combine the two undead armies. You have a new lore that's all about raising up this stuff. And then there's also another lore, or one of the spells that lets you heal as well. No big deal there, since it's not part of the attributes anymore. But with that, how could you really be against this? Really, Tomb Kings weren't really destroying things before, and if anything, people were just complaining about Tomb Kings just hiding in the back and being defensive. Well, now you won't really see that. The lore is not crazy. This book in itself is a good new mix, and it's something that I really do like the look of, especially because this book does not replace the other books. If you are a die-hard Tomb King player, and maybe there is some magic item that you do really like using, go ahead. You can still do that. You can still use all that thing. They did not say those books are no longer valid. This is just a new separate book. Now, that in itself is really awesome. I mean, if they want to make up a new army where, hey, Empire and Bretonnians, hey, you can mix that stuff together. You know, as long as there's nothing there that's super broken, whatever, right? Go ahead. That's going to be just fine. So, here's the next part, which is going to be kind of more saying how this army does get kind of crazy. And that's with the introduction of the characters, the special characters. And so there are the three kind of horsemen that you guys have seen. Awesome, awesome models. Neferata, or what her name is, Archon the Black, and Manfred. And these are characters which are on their cool, awesome, huge spectral steeds. But for the most part, these guys are these mounted characters. And if they want to be doing anything cool, I can shoot them down. And once they die, that's pretty much it. I mean, that's if you gave the option to be putting Manfred onto a dragon, you're probably not going to do it because the dude's going to die. Now, this is a point here, too, where I should talk about a new special rule, which is the whole idea where when the general dies, your army doesn't go and crumble. Apparently, the power of Nagash is so strong that even if you kill the general, you're not going to go crumbling all across and all these bad things are going to happen. It's just, your general's dead, no more leadership, no more, you know, magic maybe, all these things. So pretty big deal, but it's not like you just lose everything. But even with that in mind, that you won't be crumbling, it still is a massive deal saying, hey, here's Manfred right here. You want to shoot him with your cannons? Great, he's right here. And so that really keeps all of them in check. A lot of them have some really crazy rules. A lot of them are kind of close to as before. Archon the Black has something kind of special with him I want to talk about, but we have to talk about Nagash first. So, here's the big thing about Nagash. First of all, the really big thing is his points. He's 1,000 points, so which is massive. And the way that they actually fit this in is that lords are now allowed to be up to 50% to your army. So, whereas before, if you want to take 1,000 point Nagash, you better be playing a 4,000 point game. Now, a 2,000 point game, you can be putting Nagash in there. And that's a really big deal. Now, let's talk about the other big deals about Nagash. Here's another one. Physically, he is massive. This thing is huge. It's on, I believe, an Ragnarok base, you know, big thing. And the guy is super high. Like, I don't care if you put him behind a building, I can probably still see him unless it's this massive, huge tower. So, you can't hide this guy. He has a big base. And if you want to try and hit him with a cannon, you know, it's pretty dang easy to hit this thing. Even if your rock lava scatters, it's probably going to hit this guy too. So, it's really kind of bad news to him for that. He only has, he has 7 wounds, and he has a 4+ ward. And so really, this guy, you know, for 1,000 points, could go down first turn to some cannons. So you do have to really watch out for that. But here's the other parts. He is damn freaking awesome. His other stats are really not too bad, especially since you can actually boost his number of attacks with power dice directly. It's not a spell. He just puts it there. He can cast, first of all, he's a level 5. He can cast his spells with 10 dice. You know, he doesn't have to just say, like, okay, 6 dice, here we go. He can go 10 dice, here we go. So if you really want to spell off, bam, this guy can do that, and it'll be pretty crazy. Here's the other thing. Whenever he casts these raising spells, 2 things. One, the number of guys you get for the points, that's tripled. And so whereas before I was talking about the things that you raise up, well, you know, it's not that really big and whatever, it's okay, it's just manageable. Once you triple that number, it gets pretty scary. So, even though he's 1,000 points, he's going to be able to bring these guys in really, really quickly. Here's the other thing. is that, you know how I said where things were kind of controlled because you can only bring them in like within 1 foot of the model? No, that's extended now. Now it's 3 foot of the model. So seriously, if you were to say like Terrorgeist on a flank, bam, done. I didn't have to move up. He's just over there. And here's the other thing too, is that this guy flies. So you got this massive crazy monster that can fly 20 inches and then raise something way over. So let's say we're playing some crazy mission where I need to get something into deployment zone. That is no problem for Nagash. I'm going to fly up. I'm going to throw 10 power dice, or all the power dice I got pretty much. And bam, I got a unit in your deployment zone. It just happens. And yeah, that is pretty crazy. Now, here's the other perk too. These monsters and these things that you raise up, you don't get victory points for. And I said before, you know, that's not a big deal. Whenever that happens, it's like, okay, great, you got some skeletons or zombies. I'll kill them. I got no points. Maybe killed an orc or two back, but I blew through them. When you start doing this, it gets really nuts. Now, a very, very good example of this is I think you guys should go see a battle report that Matthew Reeson did. And this really opened my eyes to this of how well it can be abused. And, you know, I've said it before, Matthew Reeson really knows the vampire accounts. And really what he did here is the whole army hides in the back. So you take what you need for core, you take maybe a couple of Terrorgeists because he loves Terrorgeists, and then everything stays back. I'm saying you're not going to get these points because I'm going to hide. Meanwhile, Nagash, who you have to respect because he's pretty killy, he'll be flying around and doing some danger and raising up these massive units. So in this one here, he was able to raise up a big thing of like 11 Crypt Horrors, and he raised up like 8 or so Vargeists, sorry. He was able to pull up something like 10 Blood Knights, and it was like bam, bam, bam. And the opponents had to go through, and they had to kill all these models. Meanwhile, you know, these aren't skeletons, these aren't zombies, and they're doing significant damage back. You know, I can go in with my Savage Orc Biggins, and I'll take off, you know, 50 zombies in one go. But if I have to go into a unit of Crypt Horrors or Vargeists, that's not going to happen. I might still wipe you out in one round of combat, but I'm going to lose a lot of models back, and I'm going to gain 0 victory points for it. And at any point, if Nagash decides, oh, okay, well now you're down to just 1 rank of savages, okay, I'm in. I'm going to go in there, I'm going to save my dice so I'm more combat-y, and I'm just going to go and smash you. And that style of play is very, very hard to beat. And it's something where, I mean, at this point here, it's hard to comment too much on it, but here's the big thing here that I don't like about this is I think it's going to cause a massive, massive meta shift where just like how we had the Demon Prince, and everybody had to also start taking more war machines because if that Demon Prince got to you, it's game over. Now you have to take this stuff for Nagash. And like I said, Nagash can die first turn. He goes on there, you shoot a couple of cannons at him, and the guy gets kind of unlucky with his wards. He can go down first time. It is a game over for the vampires, or the undead rather, because they've lost 1,000 points, they've lost their general, their magic's gone, they've got crappy guys left, and bad things are going to happen. However, it's this huge skew of either you have the answer or you don't have the answer. And if you don't have the answer, they're just going to keep on raising up these units, and it's almost kind of like the Wood Elf thing, where the Wood Elves, they just going to run around. I don't need to go, and don't need to wipe you out, but if I can kill 100 points, I'm going to walk away with the victory. And the same thing works here in an oddly weird zombie-esque type way, where go ahead, you can kill all these guys that are raising up out of the ground, but if I, in the end, kill 100 points and you didn't kill anything that wasn't brought up with magic, sucks to be you. So that's kind of a deal. Of course, when you're dealing with an army that's based off of magic, you always have to wonder what happens if you have a bad magic phase. Well, Nagash has an answer for that. He can save dice from the Dispel phase to the Power Dice phase. So he can convert that over, and he can make sure he has a powerful lore there or time with it. You can always have another character with the Forbidden Rod and stuff like that. So that can really be mitigated. In all seriousness, then, as well, the whole idea where I can take my dice and I can try and stop you, that's almost made a lot more difficult, too, where the whole idea where he can throw all 10 dice if he wanted to. I mean, if you only roll 7 dice, sure, it's all 7 dice, but it's really hard. You know, if they have 7 and you have 5, he has the advantage, not only in dice, but also in wizard level as well. So that's a hard thing to deal with. And the more dice you get in there, better chance you're going to be a miscast, and I just can't stop it anyway. So the whole idea of a scroll gets harder and harder and harder. So, yeah, it's really, really interesting. Now, here is the first issue I have with this whole thing, is that it's really dependent on this whole idea of the way the magic phase works, and it's really dependent on the way that the scenarios go, and it's really dependent on the way that you even make your army and so forth. Coming up soon, at some point, you know, there's some people saying it's going to be in 2015, some people saying it's going to be next month. 9th is coming, and you can be sure that they made this book with 9th in mind. So, the way he's designed now, they must feel, because this isn't just some fly-by-night Chaos Dwarf book where, here you go, here's some broken crap. I'm never going to let those guys go. You have this book here that's done by GW. They put lots and lots of thought into this, so clearly this is going to be designed to work now and with 9th. And so it's then almost to the point where how much do we want to focus on this when we know it's going to change for later? Now, that, of course, I can't really comment on. I don't know what's going to change, but that brings us to another one, the 50% in Lords. Now, this, of course, is required in this book, because if you are going to be taking something like Nagash, if it's not allowing 50% Lords, it's almost like Mazdamondi was with the Lizardman. Once they made his points so high, you just don't see the guy anymore. I mean, for starters, you didn't see him because he wasn't super competitive, but at the same time, you're not going to see him anyway because of the points. Now, with this 50%, great, okay, you got Nagash, that makes this possible, but what does this mean if you apply it to other armies too? Well, that's going to start meaning you're going to see things like double Demon Princes. If you thought one Nurgle Demon Prince was bad, wait till you see 2. And here's another part with it as well that you have to keep in mind where, again, who knows what's going to happen in 9th, but if you look at those other characters, say like with Archon the Black and all the rest of them, they have combined profiles. So whereas before you'd have to randomize when you're shooting at it whether it's going to hit the rider or the mount, or if you're hitting it with a template, both will be hit, and you had to do all that finicky stuff. Now it's only one profile with a whole bunch of wounds, and in the end, I mean, if you had another character in mind, could be a really, really good armor save and ward save. So all of a sudden, when you start doing that, well, maybe looking ahead to 9th, maybe for like an Orcs and Goblins, you might start seeing double Wyvern. Because if you start seeing something where the wounds combine, and you got this 8 wound model that has a 2+ save and a 4+ ward, this thing's pretty legit. Especially when it's hiding behind trolls, so cannons have a hard time getting to it. You know, who knows if that's actually going to change in 9th, but I'd say it's pretty well in the bag if we're seeing it with the characters here. So, looking forward to that really makes you wonder, like right now we have the double Demon Prince. That is immediate, that is now, that is something you have to keep in mind. Down the road, you have to start thinking about all those other combinations that could be coming up. But then again, who knows what all the other changes? Who knows how the canon might change? How about all these other things? So it's really hard to deal with all that. Now, this is where a big other controversy comes up for how you are going to actually play. If you go down to the shop, should it be expected that somebody's just going to bring up this army and you have to play them? Or is it going to be more of a campaign thing? Now, unfortunately, they're not super 100% clear in the book. I wish it was. It just said right up in your face, bam, this is now a legit army. You do this, you do this. But it's not really 100% clear from the way that I read it. So that's really an issue. Now, let's say it even was super, super clear. You also have your own tournament organizers. And we know tournament organizers out there can change tournaments in lots of different ways. You can be adding in comp, you can add in whatever special rules you want. And, I mean, if you look at Chaos Dwarves, it's always really a big question. If you're a Chaos Dwarf player and you're going to a tournament, make sure you ask them whether it's going to be allowed or not. Because no matter what GW says, there will be tournaments out there where they just say, no Chaos Dwarves. No, not allowed. So you got to make sure you know this stuff. Now, when it comes to this book, it's exactly the same thing, but pushed to 11. Because, first of all, you have to ask, well, are they going to allow the Army of Undeath? Is this going to be allowed? And this could be very simple, saying, oh yeah, if you want to combine your vampires and your Tomb Kings, go ahead. Yeah, you can make an army like that too. Well, can we get Nagash? You know, it could be Nagash's band, because they're like, well, no, Nagash, he's too crazy. That could extend further. I said I was going to say something with Arcan the Black. Well, whereas Nagash says everything is ×3, basically, Arcan the Black says everything is ×2, which also, it's not the super extreme, but it's that next kind of affordable level where if I don't want to invest 1,000 points and this will be enough for me, it is the same type of thing where raising up this is okay, but when you raise up this, it starts being a big deal. And of course, Nagash is like, how about this? So that'll be another big question. Now, here's another big question going into tournaments. How about the 50%? You know, tournament organizers could say, go ahead, bring your Army of Undeath. I am not going to ban special characters, but we are playing with 25% Lords. And all of a sudden that means, like, Nagash is off the table, blah, blah, blah. And that might be a thing where they don't want to have double Demon Prince. They just don't want to have to deal with all this. And I'm coming at this not just as just like a player wondering like, oh, I wonder what tournaments are going to do. I am a tournament organizer. I speak with other tournament organizers in this city and in neighboring cities. And really right now, this is really up in the air about whether it'll be allowed and really all the rest of it too. Now, probably another part of this when you're looking at this book is going to be scenarios. And it's almost the same thing again where they're grouped in kind of with the Wood Elves. Now, Wood Elves can do great and they can run around and they'll say, hey, I win by 100 points and then I win, but they might not have a lot of banners, and so if you lose a character or something, they can lose Blood and Glory. Well, Blood and Glory is going to be another big deal for this army here. When you have 1,000 points, when you have half your points, if it's a 2,000 point game, in one model, which is your general, and normally you don't have a lot of banners as well for the rest of the things, although now you probably could build that way, you probably aren't. One lost guy could lose you the game. Now, keep in mind, when you raise up units, you can raise up skeletons with a banner. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. So if you are playing Blood and Glory, you can kind of mitigate it, but definitely if you're playing it in the way with Nagash, Blood and Glory could be a huge, huge issue. Again, you don't have to use Nagash. You could be building an army with a Blender Lord who's on foot inside of a unit, and it'll be hard to deal with, and all of a sudden then, it'll be, as long as you build your army now with a lot of other banners, Blood and Glory isn't really that big of an issue, but If you build it with Nagash, it is going to be an issue. The other one's going to be taking Watchtower. If there are actually a tournament that's running Watchtower, and again, if you're running the Nagash army, it's not really doing what you want because you have 1,000 points that's going into your Nagash. You're also going to have 25 points that's going to go into core. And even now that you have Vampire core and you have Tomb King core, they're still not good core. So then you just have another 25% that, sure, that could be something killy inside of a tower, say Graveguard with the Banner of Barrow. Well, no, you can't even take the Banner of Barrows anymore. That's gone. So probably the best you can do is a Flaming Banner. So you're re-rolling to wound or something like that there. It's not going to be that great. And like I said, Nagash could raise up more combat units to try and go after the tower, but they're stuck there for a turn. So they're like, haha, I pop up on turn 4. Oh, you rolled a 6? Good game. I'm out of here. So it's almost like a thing there where what you'd have to do if it was a Watchtower is just Terrorgeist. And you're just screaming into that thing. And you're raising up units with Nagash to hold back the other things while the Terrorgeist just scream and scream and scream so that hopefully after that you can throw something into there. But even then, it's probably going to be pretty tough. So, I mean, again, if you're running a regular army and you're going to be taking Blender Lords and you're just going to be filling up that Watchtower with Blender Lords, right? You got something that starts in there. Hopefully it won't crumble and die. Then you character inject to get those guys in there. You probably won't lose a tower. But what I'm saying is that both Blood and Glory and Watchtower will be a big issue for the army of undead. So again, when we're talking about tournaments, are you running that? Is it just going to be battle line forever for all the stuff? You know, these are going to be very, very pertinent in whether this army is going to be competitive or whether you're just going to lose a third of your games. So really big things to keep in mind. So in the end of all of this, where are we at? Like I said, I guess you can kind of catch this in the end, that there's a lot of parts of this where you can say, wow, this is broken as all hell, and we should probably stay the hell away from it. But that's what I was saying, that over this last week of talking to players and things, and seeing more other experiences with the book, that I don't really feel that anymore. First of all, for people who just want to have a Tomb King army that can march, they can do that now. For vampire count armies that want to have things that can shoot, they can do that now. And you have to remember, it's not like, oh great, they just get shooting for free. Well no, if you want to be adding in Stolopults and Skeleton Archers, you're not adding those for free, you're having to take something else out. So, I don't think that's too broken. Combining the two armies together, I think that's actually a very great thing. Now, the negative thing, and the reason why I sold my vampire counts, is that it's such an interesting and fun idea that it's kind of a GW trap. If you're a vampire count player, you're going to start buying all this Tomb King stuff. If you're a Tomb King player, you're going to start buying all this vampire stuff. Plus, you have all these crazy new models like Nagash that people are going to buy up. Oh, are you not an undead army? You're orcs and goblins? That's okay. You can use these spells now that let you raise them up. Oh, okay, so I'm going to buy all these things. So, it is very tempting. I mean, for me, where I run my orcs and goblins, the way that I run it, I probably wouldn't be taking Undeath because I'd rather be doing my Foot of Gork from across the table. But for those who like taking a level 4 and also a level 1, well, you know, that level 1 that's holding a scroll, that signature spell or that one spell I get normally isn't all that great. If I go instead with this Lore of Undeath, basically, I can now have that signature where I raise up units and if nothing else, I can be using this as a very tactical spell to be redirecting or putting down monsters, or not monsters, well, it could be monsters, or models to go be getting war machines. You know, all of a sudden you're guaranteeing that this level 1 will have a very good tactical spell. It's almost like for the people that have access to wild form. You know, if you got that 6 spell, you're golden. Well, now, no matter what model, what wizard you are, you will have access to this lore, and you can be raising up these undead, which I already said can be a huge tactical advantage. So that again is just huge temptation for players saying, hey, you're an elf player, might want to buy some skeletons, and then sometimes you might roll up that one where you can raise up war machines. So maybe even though I'm a dark elf player, I might want to have a Skelepult in my bag so that if it comes up in the game, I have it. Because if I don't buy these things and I raise up a unit of chariots, sorry, you don't have the models. You just can't do that spell. So it kind of forces you that if you want to partake in this fun, you've got to pay the money for what could possibly happen. So, you know, that's kind of like the negative side of what GW is doing to get money. But again, they're a company that should be able to get money from this. And for the most part, it's just something that I see now, again, a week after the fact, that it just gives a lot more options. And for the majority of it, it's more fun than something that's kind of more broken or power creep. When you get to the 50%, when you get to the Nagash, when you get to the hiding at the back of the board and raising things up, even then, now again that I've had a week to think about this, I think it's all going to work out. Because, first of all, we're going to have this shift in the meta, right? I mean, the first time you play this, if you're not prepared and somebody drops the 2 Nurgle Demon Princes, or they drop, you know, the Gash and he does all these things to you, if you're not prepared, sure, it's going to hurt. But then, as people prepare for tournaments, they're going to start preparing their armies to deal with this. You got to know that all the war machines they have, they're going to start taking those war machines to take you down. Before, I was already at the spot where I was always taking 2 Rock Labas, 2 Doom Divers. Those 4 were automatically in all my competitive lists. Now, I'm saying I need to have them and my Chukkas. The ante has been upped, and I need to have all these war machines. And what's going to happen then is that when these things are really ingrained in the meta, well, okay, you brought up Nagash, pew, 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 he's dead. And when these things start coming up more and more, or you brought 2 Demon Princes, all right, pew, 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 okay, they're dead, the meta is going to shift again. And just like how you can be taking 2 Demon Princes, you can now also be taking stronger light councils and stuff like this. So I think the anti-meta will be strong enough to deal with these forces that it's not going to be the end of times. It's not going to be wrecking Warhammer. It's going to balance itself out. And then by the time that balances itself out, 9th is going to be coming here, and then all of a sudden with that, who knows what's going to happen, but you kind of hope that things will be set up with either new scenarios or whatever have you, that things will be more balanced overall anyway. So there you go. There's the review of the book. It was more kind of wishy-washy compared to my normal tactical reviews of books, but that really is because it really was just building on existing armies. I mean, for the most part, you could really go probably to my Vampire Count review, and you can go to my Tomb King review, and if you want to learn about the units and what units are good, go to those. But this is really more talking about the way that you combine them, the way that you have 50%, and the crazy things you can do with the Gash. So there you have it. Hopefully this is going to be something that can enlighten you, and I mean, I'm sure that you've seen by now this by 3 other channels, but here's my thoughts on it. I'm definitely going to be trying to get a battle report of my own with this as soon as I can. over the next week here, as well with my campaign, the Around the World in 12 Games. I had it as a bonus objective for the next 2 months to try and be getting a game with or against this new Army of Undeath. So hopefully if you guys, YouTube watchers, a lot of your subscribed channels should be having a lot more battle reports for these, and we can all see how this actually works out. I say that after a week I know how this is all going to settle, but in the end, who knows? Maybe there's something I'm not really thinking about, and hey, if you have that idea, put it down below. But the way I'm actually seeing it now, I'm actually really, really liking this book and excited for what the other ones will have, because coming after this first book, there's going to be 3 more like it. There's going to be a Warriors of Chaos one, or a Chaos one. There's going to be a Skaven one, and then something else. I'm really hoping it's Orcs and Goblins, but we'll see. And whereas before I was kind of really negative, now I'm really looking forward to it. So anyway, thanks for watching this, and we'll catch you later. Bye.